Jordan Whitmore chose a funeral to end his marriage. Under the soft echo of hymns and polished wooden beams, he lifted his phone and read the message he had sent the night before. "I'm filing for divorce. I can't stay married to someone who can't even keep a job." Murmurs moved through the pews. Heads turned. Claire Gonzales stood 3 rows back, hands folded, eyes steady. She did not defend herself. She did not leave. Jordan believed humiliation was power. He did not know that within days the balance would shift in ways he could neither predict nor control. If you believe dignity is stronger than noise, stay with this story. Before we continue, tell me where you're watching from and your local time. I read every comment. And if you value justice that unfolds quietly, consider subscribing so you don't miss what happens next. Claire Gonzales had never been loud. At 35, she had perfected the art of listening longer than other people were comfortable speaking. She had learned that silence unsettled the impatient and exposed the careless. In meetings, she spoke last. At dinners, she asked questions and remembered the answers. In her marriage, she observed. She kept a small black notebook in her handbag, unremarkable, soft leather elastic band around the spine. Inside were grocery lists, project deadlines, stray thoughts. Over the years, the entries had shifted. Dates, exact phrases, tone descriptions, not accusations, just records. Claire worked as a financial analyst for a regional logistics company in Houston. She had not loved the job, but she had respected it. She liked numbers because they did not lie about their nature. They either added up or they didn't. The layoff happened on a Tuesday morning at 9:17 a.m. The company had lost 2 major contracts. Departments were restructured. Claire and 12 others were called into a glass-walled conference room. The HR director used words like strategic recalibration and market volatility. Claire listened, hands folded over her notebook. She did not cry. She asked about severance, health coverage, the timeline for final pay. When she walked out of the building carrying a cardboard box with a framed photo and a ceramic mug, she felt something hollow but not catastrophic. Jobs ended. That was a fact. Facts could be managed. Jordan believed jobs defined people. He was 38 and worked in residential real estate, mid-range developments, suburban expansions, polished listings with drone footage and scripted charm. He understood perception. He cultivated it carefully. His suits were tailored. His smile calibrated. His social media suggested stability and upward momentum. He often said, "Image is equity." Their marriage had lasted 8 years. From the outside, they were balanced. No visible scandals, no public fights, dinner parties twice a month, Christmas cards with coordinated outfits, a home in a gated subdivision with neutral paint and symmetrical landscaping. Inside, the balance was different. Jordan corrected Claire in small ways. "You're explaining too much. Don't say it like that. Smile when you tell people that." It was rarely shouted. It was phrased as improvement, optimization. He liked to review her emails before she sent them for tone. He suggested she order something lighter at dinners. He laughed when she disagreed with him in front of friends, then explained later why that had been unnecessary. Claire had once written in her notebook, "Correction, framed as care." On the afternoon she lost her job, she drove home slowly. Houston traffic moved in layered, patient sunlight, reflecting off windshields in white flashes. She rehearsed nothing. She did not plan how to say it. Jordan was in the kitchen when she entered. He had his laptop open at the island counter, 2 phones beside him. He was comparing property photos. "You're early," he said without looking up. "They eliminated my department." That made him look up. Completely yes. He studied her face as if searching for panic. "What's the severance? 8 weeks. Benefits through the end of next month." He nodded once, calculating. Not comforting, calculating. "Do you have something lined up?" No pause. "Well," he said, closing his laptop with deliberate care, "we can't afford for this to drag." The sentence was calm. The meaning was not. Claire felt the shift immediately. not concern for her, but concern for the optics of her unemployment. She saw it behind his eyes, the dinners, the golf outings, the casual mentions of their dual-income household. "I'll start applying tomorrow," she said. "Tomorrow?" His tone sharpened slightly. "You should already be reaching out. People talk. I don't want anyone thinking we're unstable." Claire nodded. "I'll handle it." That evening, she updated her resume. She sent 3 emails to former colleagues. She cleaned the kitchen. She washed the dishes Jordan had left by the sink. At 11:42 p.m., after Jordan had gone upstairs, she opened her notebook. Tuesday, 9:17 a.m., laid off. 6:08 p.m., Jordan, we can't afford for this to drag. Concern perception. She underlined perception once. Jordan did not sleep well that night. He lay awake staring at the ceiling, running scenarios. A wife without employment complicated his narrative. He had built a version of their life that suggested mutual success. If Claire drifted, he believed the symmetry would break. By morning, irritation had replaced anxiety. At 7:13 a.m., he left for the gym without saying goodbye. Claire woke to the sound of the garage door closing. The house felt larger in his absence. Quieter. She made coffee and sat at the kitchen table where Jordan had been the night before. The sunlight hit the granite countertop at the same angle. The house looked identical. Only the arrangement of power had shifted slightly, almost imperceptibly. At 9:02 a.m., her phone buzzed. A message from Jordan. She read it once. Then again. "I've been thinking. I can't do this. I can't stay married to someone who isn't moving forward. I think it's better if we end this now before it gets worse." There was a second message. "I'll have my attorney send paperwork. We should keep this clean." The timestamps were precise, the tone clinical. Claire did not respond immediately. She placed the phone face down on the table and stared at the coffee cooling in her mug. The words were not emotional. They were transactional. "Better if we end this now." She picked up her notebook. Wednesday, 9:02 a.m., text divorce. Language performance-based worth. Someone who isn't moving forward. She paused, then added, "Timing, 24 hours after job loss." There was no anger in her handwriting, just clarity. Jordan believed he was decisive. He told himself he was preventing decline. In his mind, he was acting before instability became visible. He did not consider what it meant to send divorce through the text. He did not consider the optics of that choice. Claire rose from the table and walked through the house slowly. The framed wedding photo above the fireplace, the matching towels in the guest bathroom, the carefully staged bookshelf Jordan had arranged by color. Everything curated. She went upstairs and opened her closet. Half of it was hers, the other half Jordan's suits in precise order. She did not pack. Instead, she returned downstairs, opened her laptop, and created a folder. Whitmore Legal inside it. She created subfolders, texts, emails, financial, timeline. Then she exported screenshots of Jordan's messages and saved them with file names that included the date and time. She forwarded the messages to a new email address she created that morning, one that Jordan did not know existed. At 10:17 a.m., she called Melissa Grant. Melissa had been her college roommate and now worked as a contract attorney in Austin. Practical, direct, not sentimental. "He texted you?" Melissa asked after listening in silence. "Yes. And you haven't responded." "No good. Don't." Claire heard typing in the background. "Save everything. Don't argue. Don't explain. If he wants this clean, we'll make it clean. But document it." Claire looked at her notebook. "I've started a record. I know you have," Melissa said softly. After the call ended, Claire felt something unfamiliar, not grief, not yet. A narrowing of focus. Jordan had made his move quickly. Too quickly. By noon, he had sent another message. "We should talk logistics. I assume you'll move out. It's simpler. Assume." Claire wrote it down. Outside, a delivery truck drove past. Somewhere down the street, a lawnmower started. Ordinary suburban sounds. The world did not shift for private humiliations. Jordan returned home that evening, expecting volatility. Tears, accusations, perhaps pleading. He found Claire at the dining table with her laptop open. "You got my messages," he said. "Yes." Her voice was even. "So you understand? I understand what you wrote." He waited for more. It did not come. "I think it's best," he continued. "This isn't personal. It's about direction." Claire looked at him carefully. "Direction changes," she said. He frowned, slightly uncertain whether she was agreeing or challenging him. "I'll have my attorney draft something fair," he said. "We can avoid drama." Drama? Claire nodded once. That would be efficient. Jordan mistook composure for compliance. He went upstairs feeling oddly triumphant. He had acted decisively, controlled the narrative before it slipped. Downstairs, Claire opened her notebook again. Wednesday, 6:42 p.m. Jordan. This isn't personal. It's about direction. Observed relief in tone. Assumption of control. She closed the notebook gently. Upstairs, Jordan texted a colleague. Making changes. Needed to. He did not know that Claire was already building a structure far stronger than reaction. He believed he had ended something weak. He did not yet understand that silence, when documented, becomes evidence. And evidence waits. Jordan slept well the night after he asked for a divorce. In his mind, the difficult part was over. He had acted before circumstances could erode him. He had protected his image, his momentum, his sense of upward motion. He woke early, checked his phone, and half expected a series of emotional messages from Claire: anger, disbelief, bargaining. There were none. At 7:58 a.m., he sent another text. "I spoke with my attorney. He'll send over a preliminary agreement today. If we keep this uncontested, it'll be faster and cheaper for both of us. A minute later, you can stay here for 30 days. After that, I'll need the house listed as solely mine." He reread the messages before pressing send, satisfied with the tone. Reasonable, generous even. Upstairs, Claire was already awake. She had not slept much, but she did not feel tired. Her mind had shifted into quiet precision. The shock had passed in the first hour. What remained was observation. At 8:04 a.m., her phone buzzed. She read Jordan's new messages once. Then she opened her notebook. Thursday, 7:58 a.m., uncontested, faster and cheaper, solely mine. Assumes transfer of shared asset. She underlined solely mine. The house was legally in both their names. She did not respond. Instead, she walked downstairs, poured coffee, and opened her laptop. She navigated to the county property records website. Within minutes, she downloaded the deed joint tenancy with right of survivorship. She saved the PDF into the financial folder. At 9:12 a.m., an email arrived from an unfamiliar address. Subject: Whitmore dissolution draft proposal attached was a 12-page document from Jordan's attorney, a man named Carl Hendricks. Claire read it slowly. The proposal stated that Claire would waive claim to the house in exchange for a modest cash settlement, an amount that barely covered 6 months of living expenses. She would forfeit any claim to Jordan's retirement accounts. There was a clause suggesting that since she was currently unemployed, spousal support was not applicable due to short-term transitional circumstances. Transitional circumstances. Claire read that line 3 times. The draft also included a paragraph stating that both parties agreed the separation was amicable and mutually desired. She closed her eyes briefly. Amicable. She'd been informed of her divorce by text message less than 24 hours after losing her job. Claire did not feel anger. She felt alignment. The pieces of Jordan's thinking were now visible. He believed speed would corner her. He believed financial pressure would create compliance. He believed she would fear instability more than injustice. She forwarded the draft to Melissa. Within minutes, her phone rang. "Don't sign anything," Melissa said without greeting. "I won't. He's trying to frame this as if you initiated it." "I noticed. And the house clause is aggressive." "I noticed that too." Melissa exhaled slowly. "You need a family law attorney in Houston. Someone sharp, not reactive, strategic. Claire already had a name. 2 years earlier, a colleague had gone through a difficult custody battle and had spoken quietly about a lawyer who never raised her voice and never lost track of a detail. Rebecca Sloan. "I'll make a call," Claire said. Jordan, meanwhile, was telling a different version of events. At 10:30 a.m., he met a colleague for coffee near his office. "Claire's been drifting," he said, stirring his drink. "The job loss just made things clear." His colleague nodded sympathetically. You can't carry someone who won't carry themselves. Jordan felt affirmed. His narrative was being accepted without resistance. He framed himself as practical, forward-looking, not cruel, not impulsive. He did not mention the timing. He did not mention the text message. Back at the house, Claire dialed Rebecca Sloan's office. The receptionist transferred her within minutes. Rebecca's voice was calm, measured. "How can I help you, Miss Gonzales?" Claire noted the use of her maiden name. It steadied something inside her. "My husband sent divorce paperwork after I lost my job," Claire said. "He wants it uncontested. I would like to understand my position before responding." There was a pause, not of surprise, but of calculation. "Have you signed anything, Numbergood? Bring every document you have. Texts included? I've saved them. I'm glad you did." The consultation was scheduled for the following morning. After the call ended, Claire created another folder. Consult Sloan. She printed the draft agreement. She printed screenshots of Jordan's texts. She added the deed to the stack. Then she opened a spreadsheet. Date, event, evidence, witnesses. She entered Tuesday layoff, HR letter. Wednesday 9:02 a.m. divorce text. Screenshot Wednesday 6:42 p.m. Verbal confirmation. Personal record. Thursday 7:58 a.m. Additional texts are house screenshot. Thursday 9:12 a.m. draft proposal PDF. Her hands were steady. Upstairs, Jordan called out, "Did you see the email?" "Yes," she replied. "And I'll review it." "That's why I hired someone competent," he said lightly, "so we don't have to drag this out." Drag. Claire added the word to her notebook. Jordan walked downstairs and leaned against the doorway of the dining room. "You know this makes sense," he said. "We're just not aligned anymore." Claire looked up at him. "When did you decide that?" she asked. He hesitated just slightly. "It's been building. Before or after Tuesday?" His jaw tightened. "Don't make this dramatic. I'm asking for a timeline." He exhaled impatient. "It doesn't matter." Claire nodded slowly. "It matters legally." The word landed differently than he expected. "Legally," he repeated. "Yes." Jordan straightened. "Claire, I'm trying to be fair. I understand." Her tone did not accuse. It did not plead. It simply acknowledged. Jordan felt something he couldn't quite name: resistance without confrontation. It unsettled him more than anger would have. "Just don't complicate this," he said. Claire closed her laptop gently. "I won't." He mistook that for surrender. That afternoon, Claire received a voicemail. Claire Jordan's voice said lower than usual, "Let's keep this between us. No need to involve too many people. It'll just get messy." She saved the audio file. She wrote, "Voicemail request for privacy. Tone controlling, not conciliatory." That evening, Jordan went out to dinner with friends. He told them he was moving on. He did not know that Claire had already secured an appointment with one of the most meticulous family law attorneys in the county. He did not know that every word he spoke was being documented, not in rage, but in order. Claire sat alone at the dining table once more. The house felt temporary now. She ran her fingers over the edge of her notebook and flipped to a blank page. At the top, she wrote, "Objective clarity, fairness, documentation. No mention of revenge, no mention of pride." She did not need to win emotionally. She needed the record to be accurate. Upstairs, Jordan drafted a social media caption and deleted it twice. He wanted to say something about new chapters. He decided to wait until the paperwork was signed. He believed the next few weeks would be administrative. He believed Claire would prioritize survival over strategy. He did not yet understand that she had shifted from spouse to witness. And witnesses, when prepared, do not need to speak loudly. They only need to be precise. The funeral service for Jordan's uncle was held on Sunday morning at St. Mark's Community Church. A red brick building with tall white columns and polished wooden doors that reflected the Texas sun. Jordan arrived early. He wore a charcoal suit and a muted navy tie. His expression was solemn in a way that photographed well. He greeted relatives with steady handshakes, accepted condolences with controlled nods. He stood slightly forward of Claire as if proximity to grief required leadership. Claire wore black, simple, unadorned, her hair pulled back neatly. She had chosen the dress years ago for another service, one that had required no performance. The sanctuary filled gradually. Hymns played softly through hidden speakers. Conversations moved in low, respectful tones. Loss hovered in the air, fragile and communal. Jordan knew this was not the place for personal announcements. He also knew it was the place where perception could be sealed. He had told himself all week that he would not mention the divorce, that it would be inappropriate. But restraint was not his strength when control felt uncertain. The previous days had unsettled him. Claire had not argued. She had not cried. She had not pleaded. She had not signed anything either. He did not understand her stillness. As the service ended and people rose from the pews, small clusters formed near the aisles. Friends of the family approached Jordan, offering condolences, asking about his mother, about arrangements. Claire stood beside him, hands loosely clasped. An older woman, Mrs. Whitaker, a longtime family acquaintance, touched Claire's arm gently. "You've both had a difficult week," she said softly. "I heard about your job, dear." Claire nodded once. "It's temporary." Jordan smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Some things aren't meant to last," he said lightly. The comment hung in the air longer than it should have. Mrs. Whitaker looked between them. "I'm sure you'll figure it out," she said, uncertain now. Jordan felt the moment stretching. He had spent days imagining what people might assume, that his household was unstable, that he was carrying financial strain alone. The narrative needed shaping. Before he reconsidered, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. "I've actually made a decision," he said, projecting just enough to draw attention. Conversations nearby slowed. Claire felt the shift immediately. She did not turn to him. Jordan unlocked his screen. "I think it's better to be honest," he continued. "Claire and I are separating." A murmur moved through the cluster of relatives. Someone whispered, "Here." Jordan glanced at Claire briefly, as if offering her the opportunity to contradict him. She did not. "She lost her job this week," he added, voice measured. "And I've realized I can't stay in a situation that's not moving forward." The phrasing was deliberate. He lifted the phone slightly. "I told her directly," he said. "No drama." And then he read the text aloud. "I'm filing for divorce. I can't stay married to someone who can't even keep a job." The words sounded harsher spoken in the sanctuary than they had on a screen. Silence followed. Not the soft silence of mourning. A sharper one. Claire felt every pair of eyes in the radius shift toward her. She did not blink. She did not defend herself. Jordan lowered the phone slowly, as if concluding a business presentation. "It's unfortunate timing," he said, almost regretful. "But I believe in accountability. Accountability." The word echoed strangely beneath the vaulted ceiling. Linda Whitmore, Jordan's mother, stepped closer. "Jordan," she hissed under her breath. "Not now." But it was already done. A younger cousin looked visibly uncomfortable. Another relative stared at the floor. A man near the aisle coughed and adjusted his tie. Claire's hands remained steady. Inside, something precise was happening, not emotional collapse, not humiliation. Documentation. She noted the witnesses, the location, the phrasing. She noted that Jordan had chosen a funeral to declare her disposable. Jordan interpreted the silence as confirmation of his authority. "She'll be fine," he said dismissively. "She's resilient." It was the closest he came to a compliment. Claire turned toward him for the first time. Her expression was not wounded. It was observant. "I didn't realize this was an announcement," she said quietly. Her tone was calm enough to unsettle him. "I'm just being transparent," he replied. "In a church?" she asked. He shrugged slightly. Truth doesn't wait for convenience. The irony did not register with him. Claire looked around the sanctuary at the polished wood, the folded programs and hands, the grief that had gathered for another purpose entirely. Then she nodded once. "Understood," she said. She did not raise her voice. She did not argue. She simply stepped aside, allowing two older relatives to pass between them. Jordan felt a flicker of irritation. He had expected reaction. Tears would have validated his firmness. Anger would have justified his stance. Her composure felt like resistance without confrontation. As people began to disperse, whispers trailed behind Claire as she walked toward the exit. Did he really? At a funeral that was unnecessary? Jordan caught fragments, but dismissed them. They were uncomfortable with honesty, he told himself. Outside, the Texas heat pressed down in heavy waves. The parking lot shimmered. Claire paused near the steps of the church, adjusting her sunglasses. Behind her, Jordan's voice rose again, lower now, but still edged. "You could have said something," he muttered as he approached her. "About what?" she asked. "That it wasn't just about the job." She studied him. "Wasn't it?" His jaw tightened. "You know it's more than that." "Then perhaps you should have said that." Jordan looked back toward the church doors, where several relatives were still watching discreetly. "This doesn't have to be ugly," he said. Claire held his gaze. "It already is." The statement was not dramatic. It was factual. Jordan exhaled sharply. "I won't apologize for being decisive. I didn't ask you to." A beat passed between them, thin taut. Claire reached into her bag and felt the edge of her notebook. She did not take it out. She didn't need to. Every word had already anchored itself in memory. Jordan glanced at his watch. "I'm heading to my mother's," he said. "We'll talk tonight." Claire nodded. "I have an appointment tomorrow morning." "With who, a lawyer?" The word landed heavier than he expected for what he demanded, for clarity. Jordan forced a short laugh. "You don't need a lawyer if we're keeping this uncontested." Claire adjusted her sunglasses again. "That depends on the terms." There was no hostility in her voice, only steadiness. Jordan felt something unfamiliar tightening in his chest, not fear yet, but the awareness that he might not be steering this alone. "You're overcomplicating it," he said. "Documentation simplifies things," she replied. He did not fully understand what she meant. Claire descended the church steps, slowly, heels measured against stone. Behind her, the doors of St. Mark's closed softly, sealing in the echo of what had just happened. Jordan remained at the top for a moment longer, convinced that he had clarified his position publicly, and therefore strengthened it. He did not notice the subtle shift in how people looked at him now, not with admiration for decisiveness, but with quiet reassessment. He believed humiliation had secured his authority. He did not yet understand that public words become witnesses, and witnesses once formed cannot be undone. Claire reached her car and sat behind the wheel. She did not cry. She opened her notebook instead. Sunday, St. Mark's Community Church. Post-service. Public reading of text. Witnesses approx. 14 within earshot. Phrase used, "can't even keep a job." Tone, performative certainty. She closed the notebook gently. Then she started the engine. Tomorrow, she would meet Rebecca Sloan. Jordan thought he had made a statement. Claire had just gained testimony. Claire moved out on Tuesday. Not because Jordan had demanded it within 30 days, but because clarity required distance. She rented a furnished apartment 20 minutes away, neutral walls, minimal decor, a small balcony overlooking a parking lot lined with evenly spaced maple trees. It was temporary, practical, and quiet. Jordan watched her pack with an air of controlled impatience. "You don't have to rush," he said, standing in the doorway of their bedroom. "We agreed on 30 days. We didn't agree," Claire replied evenly. "You proposed." He dismissed the distinction with a shrug. It's simpler if we don't overlap. Claire folded her clothes carefully into 2 suitcases. She took her notebook, her laptop, and the framed photo from her desk at work. She left behind the wedding album. Jordan interpreted the decision as emotional distance. It was procedural. By the time she closed the apartment door behind her, the house felt less like a loss and more like evidence. Her meeting with Rebecca Sloan had been earlier that morning. Rebecca's office was understated glass walls, pale wood shelves, no dramatic artwork. The kind of space designed for precision rather than performance. Rebecca listened without interrupting. She reviewed the draft agreement, the screenshots, the timeline Claire had built. When Claire finished speaking, Rebecca leaned back slightly. "He moved quickly," Rebecca said. "Yes, too quickly." Claire remained silent. Rebecca tapped the printed draft with her pen. "This language assumes consent. It also attempts to minimize your entitlement to marital assets. And the timing, less than 24 hours after a layoff, is significant." Significant, how, Claire asked. In court context matters. Judges don't like coercion disguised as efficiency. Claire absorbed that quietly. Rebecca continued, "Have you requested full financial disclosure?" "Not yet. You will. We'll formally demand 3 years of bank statements, retirement account summaries, tax returns, credit reports." Claire nodded once. Rebecca studied her for a moment. "You're very composed. I prefer documentation over reaction." A faint smile touched Rebecca's face. "That will serve you well." By noon, Rebecca had filed a formal response, declining the proposed uncontested terms and requesting comprehensive financial disclosure. Jordan received the notification while reviewing property listings. He stared at the email from Rebecca Sloan and Associates. Representation confirmed. His jaw tightened. He called Claire immediately. "You hired a litigator?" he asked sharply. "She's a family law attorney," Claire corrected. "We didn't need to escalate. Clarification isn't escalation." He paced his office. "This is exactly what I wanted to avoid, lawyers dragging things out. Transparency shortens things," Claire said. Her tone unsettled him again. Not defensive, not hostile, controlled. "You don't trust me," he demanded. "Trust isn't a substitute for disclosure." He ended the call before she could say more. Jordan had believed Claire would rely on him for financial guidance. He had handled most of the investment decisions during their marriage. He enjoyed the role. Now the demand for statements felt invasive. That evening, Claire sat at the small kitchen counter in her new apartment and sorted mail that had been forwarded. Among the envelopes was one with a California return address she did not immediately recognize. She opened it carefully. Inside was a formal letter printed on heavy cream stationery. Reeves and Caldwell estate attorneys. Her heart did not race. She read slowly. "Dear Miss Gonzales, we regret to inform you of the passing of your Aunt Eleanor Gonzales on March 3rd. As designated beneficiary and sole heir under her trust, you are requested to contact our office at your earliest convenience to initiate formal proceedings." Claire blinked once. Eleanor Gonzales, her father's older sister. They had not been close in recent years. Eleanor had moved to California decades earlier, building a business Claire never fully understood, something in venture capital and real estate. Claire had sent holiday cards, occasional updates. They had spoken briefly last Thanksgiving. She had not known Eleanor was ill. The letter continued. "Preliminary documentation indicates that you are the primary successor trustee and beneficiary of the Eleanor Gonzales Revocable Trust. Due to the complexity and scale of the estate, we advise a confidential consultation. Scale." Claire placed the letter on the counter and read it again. Her mind did not leap to numbers. It moved to logistics. Confidential consultation. She glanced at the clock. 7:12 p.m. California time would be 5:12 p.m. She dialed the number listed. A receptionist answered, then transferred her within minutes. "Daniel Reeves speaking." Claire introduced herself. "I received a letter regarding my aunt." "Yes, Miss Gonzales," Daniel replied gently. We were hoping to reach you sooner, but circumstances delayed notification. Is everything in order? There are documents to review. And disclosures. Are you available for a video conference tomorrow? Yes. There was a brief pause. I should prepare you, Daniel said carefully. Your aunt's estate is substantial. How substantial? Claire asked. He hesitated as if weighing tone. The trust's estimated value exceeds $200 million. The words landed without theatrics. Claire did not speak immediately. 200 million. In another context, the number might have overwhelmed her. Here it felt almost abstract, like a figure in a case study. I see, she said finally. You were listed as sole beneficiary. There are protective clauses to ensure separation from marital property, provided the trust remains managed independently. Separation. The timing aligned almost too precisely. When did my aunt pass? Claire asked. 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. Before the layoff. Before the divorce text. Jordan did not know. No one in Houston knew. Daniel continued, given your current circumstances, confidentiality is critical. We'll walk you through fiduciary responsibilities and asset management structures. I understand, Claire replied. She ended the call and sat very still. The apartment felt smaller suddenly, not in confinement, but in contrast. $200 million. She thought of Jordan reading his divorce text aloud in a church. She thought of the draft agreement offering her 6 months of modest support. She did not feel vindication. She felt clarity sharpening. The next morning, Claire joined the video conference with Daniel Reeves and a financial advisor from the firm. They outlined the trust structure, diversified investments, commercial real estate holdings, and San Diego equity positions. In technology startups, municipal bonds. Your aunt was meticulous, Daniel said. She anticipated potential marital complications. The trust is structured as separate property unless commingled. Claire listened carefully. What must I avoid? She asked. Do not deposit trust distributions into joint accounts. Do not use marital funds to manage trust assets. Maintain distinct legal entities. Claire wrote notes in her notebook. Separate property, maintain firewall. Confidentiality mandatory. Daniel studied her expression. This is a significant responsibility. I prefer responsibility to surprise, Claire replied. When the call ended, she closed her notebook and looked out at the parking lot below. Cars moved in and out, without awareness of the shift that had just occurred. Jordan across town was arguing with his financial advisor about the inconvenience of producing 3 years of statements. I've already summarized everything, he insisted. That's not what disclosure means, the advisor replied. Jordan felt irritation rising. He had believed control was his default setting. He did not yet understand that the axis had moved quietly. Claire stood and walked to the small balcony. The air carried the scent of distant rain. $200 million did not change who she was. It changed what she no longer had to tolerate. She opened her notebook once more. Objective remains clarity, fairness, documentation. She did not add the inheritance to the list. Not yet. Some forms of power do not announce themselves. They wait. Jordan had always believed that pressure revealed character. He had not anticipated that it might reveal his own. 3 days after receiving Rebecca Sloane's formal request for financial disclosure, he sat at his dining table surrounded by folders he had not opened in years. Bank statements, credit card summaries, investment account printouts. The language in Rebecca's letter had been precise. Pursuant to state law, full disclosure of all marital and non-marital financial accounts for the past 3 years is required. Failure to comply may result in court sanctions. Sanctions. The word lingered. Jordan told himself he had nothing to hide. That was not entirely true. He had maintained a separate brokerage account under his name, only initially created before the marriage, later used for small speculative investments. It had grown modestly, not dramatically. But it existed outside the accounts Claire routinely reviewed when paying bills. He had never considered it deceitful. He had considered it prudent. Now its existence felt inconvenient. He called Carl Hendricks his attorney. They're demanding everything Jordan said. 3 years, it's excessive. It's standard, Carl replied flatly. You want this uncontested, provide the documents. Otherwise, we prepare for litigation. Jordan leaned back in his chair. She doesn't need to know every detail. That's not your decision anymore, Carl said. If you omit something and it's discovered, the court will not respond kindly. Jordan ended the call, irritated but uneasy. Across town, Claire sat in Rebecca Sloane's office again. This time, Rebecca had a legal pad filled with notes. I've reviewed the draft agreement and his initial disclosures, Rebecca said. They're incomplete. In what way? Retirement account summaries are missing for 1 year. No brokerage account statements. No itemized breakdown of certain transfers. Claire absorbed the information without visible reaction. Is that unusual? She asked. It's common when someone believes oversight won't occur. Claire opened her notebook. Timeline, she asked. We'll send a follow-up request. If he fails to comply fully, we file a motion to compel. Rebecca studied her carefully. Has he attempted to contact you directly? Yes. Through what means? Text, voicemail. Keep saving them. Claire nodded. Rebecca leaned forward slightly. There's something else. The public incident at the church. Claire's pen paused. Several individuals have independently mentioned it to our office. Claire looked up. You contacted them? No, Rebecca said calmly. One of them contacted us. Claire did not ask who. Public humiliation tied to financial leverage can support a narrative of coercion, Rebecca continued, especially when it follows immediately after job loss. Claire closed her notebook. I'm not seeking punishment, she said quietly. I understand, Rebecca replied, but fairness sometimes requires exposure. Claire left the office with a clear procedural roadmap. Step 1, wait for complete disclosure. Step 2, analyze discrepancies. Step 3, respond strategically. She did not mention the inheritance. Rebecca did not ask. That evening, Jordan called Claire again. You're making this adversarial, he said without greeting. I'm requesting information, she replied. You know my finances. I know what was shared. He exhaled sharply. You don't need a forensic breakdown. Transparency prevents escalation. He paused. You sound like a lawyer. I sound prepared. Jordan walked to the window of his office, staring at the manicured lawn outside. Is this about the funeral? He asked suddenly. Claire considered the question. No. You're punishing me. I'm documenting. The word irritated him more than accusation would have. Don't twist this into something it's not, he said. Claire remained steady. I haven't twisted anything. He ended the call again. Jordan did not recognize that each abrupt disconnection created its own record of tone. 2 days later, the full bank statements arrived electronically at Rebecca Sloane's office. Claire reviewed them line by line that evening at her apartment kitchen counter. She noticed patterns quickly. Regular transfers, small at first, into an account ending in 7,421. The account was not listed in the summary Jordan had initially provided. Claire highlighted the transfers and made a note. Unlisted brokerage frequency monthly. She forwarded the observation to Rebecca. Within hours, Rebecca responded. We suspected as much. We'll request statements for account ending 7,421 specifically. Jordan received the supplemental request the next morning. How do they know about that account? He demanded during a call with Carl. Because money leaves a trail, Carl replied dryly. You can't transfer funds invisibly. It's not marital, Jordan insisted. I opened it before we married. Then documentation will confirm that. If marital funds were added, it becomes partially shared. Jordan felt heat rising in his chest. It was just precautionary. Carl sighed. Precaution becomes concealment, if not disclosed. Jordan ended the call feeling cornered for the first time. Meanwhile, Claire joined another secure video conference with Daniel Reeves regarding the trust. They reviewed asset distribution schedules and governance requirements. You'll receive an initial distribution once probate formalities conclude, Daniel explained. But I recommend deferring personal transfers until your divorce is finalized. I agree, Claire said. You haven't informed your spouse, Nemo. Daniel nodded approvingly. Maintain separation. The trust remains legally distinct. Claire appreciated the clarity. After the call, she sat quietly for a moment. The inheritance felt less like sudden wealth and more like a structural pillar, solid, immovable, private. It did not change her approach. It simply removed urgency. Jordan, by contrast, felt urgency growing. He met with his mother, Linda Whitmore, that weekend. She hired a litigator, he complained. She's dragging this out. Linda frowned. You embarrassed her, she said bluntly. I told the truth. At a funeral, Jordan waved the comment away. That's irrelevant. Linda studied her son carefully. Is there something you're not telling me? No. The answer came too quickly. Linda folded her hands. Then cooperate. Jordan left, frustrated. He had expected unconditional support. Instead, he felt subtle doubt creeping into the edges of his control. On Monday, Rebecca Sloan filed a formal motion requesting complete disclosure of the unlisted brokerage account. The motion included attached evidence of monthly transfers. Claire read the filing calmly. She noticed how Rebecca's language mirrored her own notebook entries. Precise, unemotional, chronological. Jordan read the same motion and felt something colder. Exposure. He had not anticipated that small omissions would become central. That evening, he texted Claire again. We can still settle this quietly. Withdraw the motion. Let's talk like adults. Claire read the message. She did not respond immediately. Instead, she opened her notebook, offered to withdraw a motion, timing after exposure of account. Then she typed a single reply. All communication through counsel. Jordan stared at the screen. He had once admired Claire's composure. Now it felt like a wall. He began to realize something uncomfortable. He had initiated the divorce believing she would scramble. Instead, she was building structure. He had tried to control the narrative publicly. Now the narrative was assembling itself legally. Claire closed her laptop and turned off the kitchen light. Outside rain finally began to fall, steady, unremarkable cleansing. She stood at the window for a moment, listening to it strike the pavement below. The inheritance remained untouched. The documentation continued to grow. Jordan believed he was defending his position. He did not yet understand that every defensive move was creating a clearer record. And records once compiled do not argue. They conclude. The first formal conference regarding Eleanor Gonzales's trust lasted nearly 2 hours. Claire joined from her apartment dining table. Daniel Reeves appeared from a quiet office in San Diego, a wall of muted ocean photography behind him. Beside him sat a senior financial advisor, Margaret Ellis, who specialized in estate transitions involving complex portfolios. Before we proceed, Daniel began, I want to reiterate confidentiality. Until asset control is formally transferred, discretion is not simply recommended, it is protective. I understand, Claire said. She had already understood. Margaret shared her screen. Columns of numbers appeared. Real estate holdings across California and Arizona. Equity stakes in 3 mid-sized technology firms, long-term municipal bonds. Private equity positions, liquidity reserves structured for staged distribution. The total valuation sat at the bottom of the page. $203, $487, $112. Claire looked at it without expression. Margaret watched her carefully. This level of inheritance can alter legal strategy during divorce proceedings, if not handled properly, Margaret said, even if classified as separate property. Daniel nodded. Texas recognizes inherited assets as separate property. However, commingling or perceived access during litigation can complicate matters. Claire wrote in her notebook, no commingling, no disclosure beyond counsel. Daniel continued, your aunt anticipated this possibility. She included language reinforcing separation from marital claims provided proper legal boundaries are maintained. Claire felt a quiet, almost distant gratitude toward Eleanor Gonzales. Eleanor had been formidable in her own way, reserved, strategic, unapologetically private. As a child, Claire had admired her but never fully understood her. Now she did. What are my immediate responsibilities? Claire asked. Acceptance of trusteeship, Daniel said. Temporary asset freeze to prevent volatility during transition. Appointment of an independent management firm if you prefer oversight rather than daily involvement. I prefer oversight, Claire replied. Margaret smiled faintly. That is wise. They discussed timelines, tax implications, and governance structures. Claire asked precise questions. She did not rush. She did not ask how quickly funds could be accessed for personal use. At the end of the call, Daniel leaned slightly forward. May I ask something personal? Claire nodded. Are you safe? The question was direct, but calm. Yes, she answered. He seemed satisfied. If at any point you require coordination between estate counsel and divorce counsel, we can collaborate discreetly. Thank you, Claire said. When the call ended, she closed her laptop slowly. $200 million. It did not feel like power. It felt like insulation. Across town, Jordan was sitting in Carl Hendricks's office, reviewing the formal motion to compel full disclosure of the brokerage account. Carl's tone was no longer casual. You should have listed this initially, he said. It predates the marriage, Jordan insisted. Did you deposit marital earnings into it? Jordan hesitated. Occasionally. Carl exhaled through his nose. Then it is partially marital property. Jordan's jaw tightened. It's not significant. It doesn't need to be significant. It needs to be disclosed. Jordan felt frustration building. She's turning this into a spectacle. She's following procedure, Carl corrected. You initiated the divorce. Courts assume the filing party is prepared for scrutiny. Jordan leaned back in his chair. He had expected Claire to retreat. Instead, she was advancing through formal channels with methodical precision. Later that afternoon, Jordan drove past the church where he had made his announcement. He remembered the silence in the sanctuary, the way people had avoided his eyes afterwards. He told himself it was discomfort with change, but doubt had begun to creep in. He called Claire again. She answered after 2 rings. Yes, we need to talk, he said. We have attorneys. I'm not talking about paperwork. Then what are you talking about? There was a pause. You're acting like this is war. Claire considered her response. I'm acting like this is a legal process. You've changed, he said. I've clarified. The word unsettled him again. Are you trying to make me look bad? I don't control how you look. Silence. For a moment, Jordan felt something unfamiliar, loss of narrative control. He shifted tone. Look, we can adjust the settlement. You can keep some equity in the house. Through counsel, Claire repeated gently. He almost laughed in disbelief. Who are you right now? Claire looked out her apartment window at the parking lot below. I'm someone reading the fine print. She ended the call before he could respond. Jordan stared at his phone. He had underestimated something fundamental. He had mistaken silence for fragility. Meanwhile, Claire received an encrypted email from Daniel Reeves. Attached were preliminary trust documents requiring her electronic signature to accept interim trusteeship. She read every page, clause by clause. Claire Gonzales had structured the trust with layered protection, independent board oversight, fiduciary review, conditional distributions. One clause caught Claire's attention. In the event of legal proceedings involving the beneficiary, trust assets shall remain insulated and non-accessible to opposing counsel unless voluntarily disclosed. Claire closed her eyes briefly. Eleanor had anticipated litigation. Claire signed the documents digitally. Afterward, she sat still. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. She opened her notebook and wrote, Trust accepted. Remains separate. Strategy unchanged. That evening, Rebecca Sloan called. The brokerage account statements arrived, Rebecca said, and deposits from joint funds. Withdrawals used for personal expenditures not previously disclosed. Does that change our position? It strengthens it. Claire listened quietly. Rebecca continued, There's another development. A member of the church board provided a written statement regarding the funeral. Claire felt the faintest tightening in her chest. What did it say? that your husband publicly read a private message for the purpose of humiliation. Claire inhaled slowly. I didn't ask for that. You didn't have to. Rebecca paused. I need to ask, are there any other financial changes on your end we should be aware of, inheritances, pending assets? Claire did not answer immediately. This was the first moment of direct intersection between the two legal spheres. There is an estate matter, she said carefully, inherited from my aunt, structured as separate property. Rebecca was silent for a moment. Value significant. Accessed no. Rebecca's tone shifted subtly, more focused, not surprised. Then we maintain separation. Do not disclose unless strategically necessary. I agree. Rebecca's voice softened slightly. You're handling this with remarkable discipline. Claire looked at the closed notebook in front of her. I'm handling it. After the call ended, she stepped onto her small balcony. The evening air was cooler now. Streetlights flickered on in sequence. Jordan was at home reviewing the brokerage statements Carl had reluctantly prepared for submission. Each line item felt like vulnerability. He thought of the funeral again. He had believed that public certainty would end the matter quickly. Instead, it had invited scrutiny. He poured himself a drink and sat in the quiet of the house. For the first time since sending the divorce text, he felt something close to unease. Claire across town closed her balcony door and locked it. Two legal structures now moved in parallel. One built on exposure, one built on insulation. Jordan still believed he could negotiate control. He did not yet understand that Claire no longer required his stability. And once a person no longer depends on your version of safety, your leverage dissolves quietly. Not with noise, with documentation. Jordan began speaking before he began thinking. It was subtle at first. A comment during a networking lunch. A casual remark at the driving range. A phrasing that framed him as steady and Claire as unstable. She's going through something, he told a colleague one afternoon. I tried to be supportive, but you can't carry someone who doesn't carry themselves. The colleague nodded sympathetically. Jordan felt reassured. Narrative restored. But stories once released move independently of intention. By the end of the week, two separate acquaintances had mentioned to Claire carefully awkwardly that they had heard things. One text came from an old neighbor. I'm sorry about what happened. I didn't realize you were struggling financially. Claire read the message without visible reaction. She did not respond immediately. Instead, she opened her notebook, external narrative forming. Phrase circulating, struggling financially. Source likely Jordan. She closed the notebook and called Rebecca Sloan. He's discussing my employment publicly, Claire said calmly, framing it as incapacity. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Do you have written evidence indirect? Then we document pattern. If it escalates into reputational harm, we address it formally. Claire nodded, though Rebecca could not see her. I'm not interested in silencing him, Claire said. You're interested in accuracy, Rebecca replied. Yes? Later that evening, Jordan's mother, Linda Whitmore, called Claire directly. Her tone was tight with restrained judgment. I don't understand why you're making this so complicated, Linda said. Jordan says you're refusing to cooperate. I've requested financial disclosure. Claire replied evenly. He feels attacked. Claire considered the phrasing. Transparency can feel uncomfortable, she said. Linda exhaled sharply. You've always been so quiet. I thought you were agreeable. Claire allowed the statement to sit between them. I am agreeable to fairness. Linda paused. Jordan is under a lot of stress. So am I, Claire replied. There was no accusation in her voice, only balance. When the call ended, Claire documented it. Linda Whitmore call. Accusation of non-cooperation. Language mirrors Jordan's narrative. Patterns were forming. 2 days later, Rebecca received additional bank statements from Jordan's brokerage account. Claire sat across from Rebecca's desk as they reviewed the details together. There, Rebecca said, pointing to a highlighted section, repeated transfers labeled as consulting expenses. Claire leaned forward. Their withdrawals? Yes. Consulting for what? No supporting invoices, Rebecca replied. No tax documentation attached. Claire's mind moved quietly through implications. Could it be personal? It appears so. Rebecca looked up. Do you know of any external relationships? Claire held Rebecca's gaze steadily. I know of secrecy. Rebecca nodded once. That's enough. They began constructing a timeline correlating transfers with Jordan's travel schedule. 2 weekends labeled as property conferences coincided with significant withdrawals. Claire did not speculate aloud. She wrote, funds withdrawn, no documentation. Timing aligned with out-of-town travel. Rebecca leaned back. If we pursue discovery further, we can request depositions. Will that escalate? It will clarify. Claire folded her hands in her lap. Clarify, she repeated softly. Across town, Jordan was growing impatient. Carl had warned him that incomplete disclosure could trigger court sanctions. He felt cornered not by guilt, but by process. He called a friend late one evening. She's turning everything into evidence, he complained. It's ridiculous. What did you expect, his friend asked. You filed. Jordan bristled. She could have just signed. Maybe she didn't want what you offered. Jordan did not respond. He poured another drink. For the first time, a small, unwanted thought surfaced. Had he underestimated her entirely? Meanwhile, Claire received a formal written statement from a member of St. Mark's Church Board. The statement described the funeral incident in detail. Mr. Whitmore publicly read a private message referencing Mrs. Gonzales's unemployment in a manner that appeared intended to shame. Claire read the line twice. She did not feel vindicated. She felt affirmed. Rebecca added the statement to their case file. This supports coercive behavior, Rebecca said, especially when paired with the divorce timing. Claire nodded. Will it matter in court? Yes. That evening, Jordan sent Claire another message. We need to stop this narrative that I humiliated you. That's not what happened. Claire read it carefully. Then she typed, public events have witnesses. Jordan stared at the reply. He had hoped she would deny it publicly, dismiss it as misinterpretation. Instead, she had reinforced documentation. Frustration sharpened his tone. You're making me look abusive. Claire paused before responding. Your words stand on their own. She put her phone down. Silence felt stronger than argument. The next morning, Rebecca filed an amended motion requesting clarification on consulting expenses and brokerage withdrawals lacking documentation. Carl called Jordan immediately. This is getting serious, he said. If these funds were used improperly, the court may impose penalties. They weren't improper, Jordan insisted. Then provide receipts. Jordan hesitated. There were no receipts. The money had funded weekends, dinners, gifts. He had believed discretion equaled invisibility. He had not accounted for scrutiny. Later that day, Claire attended a scheduled video update with Daniel Reeves regarding the trust transition. Interim asset freeze confirmed, Daniel said. No distributions will be made until requested. That's fine, Claire replied. Margaret Ellis added, You're not required to disclose trust value during divorce unless compelled and legally relevant. In Texas, inherited assets remain separate. Claire understood. The insulation held. 2 legal worlds moved simultaneously, one tightening under exposure, one reinforcing protection. That evening, Jordan stood in the quiet of the house he had assumed would remain entirely his. He replayed the funeral moment in his mind. At the time, it had felt decisive. Now it felt reckless. He called Claire again. She answered. Why didn't you fight back that day, he asked abruptly. At the church, yes. Claire considered her words carefully. Because witnesses are more reliable than arguments. Jordan was silent. For the first time, he sensed something he could not frame as weakness. He sensed patience. And patience, when paired with evidence, is rarely accidental. Claire ended the call gently. She returned to her notebook. Pattern confirmed external narrative, financial inconsistency, coercive display. She closed it and turned off the light. Jordan lay awake that night. He had believed power came from speaking first. He was beginning to understand that power also comes from waiting. And Claire had chosen to wait with records, with structure, with law. The imbalance he once controlled was narrowing, not dramatically, not loudly, but steadily. The email arrived at 6:14 a.m. Claire saw the notification while her coffee was still brewing. The sender line read Carl Hendricks. The subject, RE strategy discussion, Whitmore dissolution. For a moment she assumed it had been sent intentionally. Then she opened it. The body of the email was brief. Jordan, if we continue to delay document production, opposing counsel may escalate. However, prolonged proceedings could pressure her financially. Given her recent unemployment, she may not sustain litigation. Let's discuss timeline leverage. Below it was a short reply from Jordan, sent 2 minutes later. Understood. If dragging this forces settlement, I'm willing. Claire read the exchange twice. Then she checked the recipient line. Her email address was listed beneath Jordan's. Forwarded by mistake. She did not react outwardly. Instead, she tapped the screen to view full headers. Metadata confirmed it had been sent from Carl's office server directly. Not fabricated, not misdirected through third parties, simply careless. Claire set her phone down and allowed the coffee machine to finish its cycle. Timeline leverage. Pressure her financially. She did not feel anger. She felt confirmation. The strategy she had suspected was now written plainly. She forwarded the email to Rebecca Sloan with a short message. Received unintentionally, preserving header data. Rebecca responded within minutes. Do not reply to sender. Save original. Will authenticate through subpoena if necessary. Claire saved the email in 3 separate locations. Digital redundancy. Documentation was becoming layered now. Jordan did not realize the mistake until nearly 2 hours later. Carl called him at 8:07 a.m. You forwarded the wrong thread, Carl said bluntly. What Jordan's stomach tightened. She received our internal discussion. Silence. Jordan replayed his morning in his mind. He had responded quickly, barely glancing at the recipient line before hitting send. Can we recall it, he asked. No, Carl replied. Not externally. Jordan ran a hand through his hair. It's just strategy. It's evidence of intent, Carl corrected. Jordan felt the word like a weight. Intent. Across town, Claire was reviewing the email one final time before leaving for Rebecca's office. Rebecca had printed it already. This, Rebecca said calmly, tapping the page as explicit acknowledgement of financial coercion. Claire sat across from her, composed. He intended to exhaust me, Claire said. Yes. Rebecca folded her hands. In Texas, courts frown upon litigation tactics designed to pressure a financially vulnerable spouse. Claire nodded. I'm no longer financially vulnerable. Rebecca looked up sharply. There it was, the intersection. Has there been a change? Rebecca asked carefully. Yes. Claire did not elaborate immediately. Rebecca waited. My aunt's estate, Claire said finally. It exceeds $200 million, structured as separate property. Rebecca leaned back slowly. That changes leverage, she said. It changes nothing about my objective, Claire replied. Rebecca studied her for a moment. You're certain, yes. Rebecca nodded once. Then we proceed exactly as before. There was no rush to deploy the inheritance as a weapon. It existed as insulation, not ammunition. Meanwhile, Jordan was pacing his office. How bad is it, he demanded during a second call with Carl. Bad enough, Carl replied. Expect them to file an amended motion citing this email. Jordan exhaled sharply. She won't take it that far. You don't know that, Carl said, and you don't know what resources she has. Jordan hesitated. What do you mean her attorney is methodical? She's not behaving like someone under financial strain. Jordan dismissed the thought. She lost her job. That doesn't mean she's insolvent. Where Jordan felt irritation flare again. She doesn't have access to anything substantial. Carl did not respond, because neither of them knew. That afternoon, Rebecca filed a supplemental motion attaching the misdirected email. The language was clinical. Opposing counsel's internal communication reveals explicit strategy to prolong litigation for the purpose of financial pressure. Claire read the filing quietly. There was no triumph in her expression, only inevitability. Later that evening, Jordan left a voicemail. Claire, his voice was tight. This is unnecessary. That email was taken out of context. Claire saved the voicemail. She did not return the call. Instead, she wrote, "Email intent confirmed." Voicemail, defensive tone. 2 days later, the first mediation session was scheduled. The conference room was neutral, long wooden table, filtered water-muted lighting. Jordan arrived early, his posture rigid. Claire entered with Rebecca. They did not make eye contact. The mediator, a gray-haired woman with careful diction, began with standard remarks. "We are here to facilitate equitable resolution." Jordan spoke first. "I've always wanted this amicable." Rebecca slid the printed email across the table without comment. The mediator read it slowly. Jordan shifted in his seat. "That was private strategy," he said. "It's being misrepresented." Rebecca's voice remained calm. The language is unambiguous. Claire remained silent. Jordan glanced at her. "You know I didn't mean it that way." Claire looked at him steadily. "I'm reading what you wrote," the mediator interjected. "Mr. Whitmore intent to financially pressure a spouse during divorce is problematic." Jordan felt the room narrowing. "I was frustrated," he said. Rebecca did not argue. She simply referenced dates, bank transfers, public statements at the church. Each fact landed cleanly. Claire did not raise her voice once. By the end of the session, the mediator recommended revised terms and full compliance with disclosure requirements. Jordan left visibly shaken. In the parking lot, he called Carl again. "She's turning everything against me," he said. "She's using what you provided," Carl replied. Jordan leaned against his car. "Why isn't she reacting?" Carl paused. "Because she doesn't need to." The answer unsettled him more than any accusation. That evening, Claire sat on her balcony, the city hummed quiet below. The inheritance documents rested inside her apartment, untouched. She considered revealing it during mediation. She chose not to. Jordan's strategy had relied on assumption. He assumed she needed him financially. He assumed unemployment equaled weakness. He assumed public humiliation would accelerate compliance. Each assumption had been recorded. Now the legal record reflected pattern, not emotion. Claire opened her notebook. Email received, accidental disclosure of intent. Mediation outcome recommendation of revised settlement. No emotional escalation. She closed the notebook gently. Jordan lay awake again that night. He replayed the mediation in his mind. The calmness in Claire's voice. The absence of panic. The absence of fear. He had initiated the divorce believing he was stepping away from instability. Now he felt destabilized, not because of confrontation, because of structure. He did not yet know about the trust. He did not yet know that the leverage he believed he held had already dissolved. He only sensed that something had shifted, and shifts, once they begin, rarely reverse. Claire turned off her balcony light and stepped back inside. The email remained in her records. Evidence does not shout. It accumulates. The court date was set for preliminary hearing on disclosure compliance. It was not dramatic, not yet. But it was formal. Jordan wore a navy suit slightly darker than usual, as if tone alone could signal gravity. He arrived with Carl 10 minutes early, flipping through a leather portfolio he had not needed in years. Claire entered with Rebecca Sloan. She carried a thin binder. Nothing more. The courtroom was modest fluorescent lighting, polished wooden benches, a state flag in the corner. The atmosphere was procedural, not theatrical. Yet tension moved quietly beneath the surface. When the judge entered, everyone rose. The matter was called Whitmore v. Whitmore, Financial Disclosure Review. Jordan felt the word review like an accusation. Rebecca spoke first. Your Honor, we are requesting confirmation of complete financial disclosure, including brokerage account ending in 7,421 and documentation supporting consulting withdrawals. Her tone was calm, measured. Jordan listened as if the facts were separate from him. Carl responded, "My client has produced requested documentation. Any delay was administrative." Rebecca did not argue. She simply placed copies of bank statements before the court clerk, highlighted, chronological. The judge flipped through the pages. "Mr. Whitmore," the judge said without looking up. "Why was this account not listed in your initial disclosure?" Jordan cleared his throat. "It predates the marriage. Were marital funds deposited?" Jordan hesitated. "Yes." The judge looked up now. "Then it required disclosure." Jordan felt the courtroom shrink. It was an oversight. Rebecca did not interrupt. The judge continued reviewing. "And the internal communication between counsel referencing timeline leverage. Would you like to address that?" Jordan's jaw tightened. "That was frustration," he said, "not intent." The judge's expression did not shift. "Intent is inferred from language, Mr. Whitmore." Silence settled heavily. Claire sat still, hands folded, eyes forward. She did not look at Jordan. She did not need to. The judge issued a clear directive. Full disclosure within 10 days. Supporting documentation for all withdrawals. Failure to comply would result in sanctions. The gavel fell lightly. The hearing ended. Outside the courtroom, Jordan exhaled sharply. "This is getting out of hand," he muttered. Rebecca did not respond. Claire walked beside her toward the elevator. In the parking structure, Jordan approached. "We didn't need to go that far," he said, a voice tight. Claire turned toward him calmly. "You sent the email. It wasn't meant for you, but it reached me." He ran a hand through his hair. "You're dragging this into court over phrasing." "No," she said softly. "Over pattern." The word hung between them. Pattern. Jordan searched her face for anger. There was none, only steadiness. "You're enjoying this," he said, though it sounded less certain than accusatory. Claire held his gaze. "I'm resolving it." Rebecca stepped slightly closer. All further communication through counsel, she reminded. Jordan watched them walk away. For the first time, the structure he had once relied on, confidence control, social image, felt insufficient. Later that afternoon, Claire met Rebecca again to review next steps. "We've established non-disclosure and coercive intent," Rebecca said. "If he continues resistance, we can seek attorney's fees." Claire considered. "I don't want punishment. Fairness often looks like consequence." Claire nodded once. There was a pause. Rebecca looked at her carefully. "You still haven't disclosed the inheritance formally." "No. It may become relevant strategically." Claire opened her notebook. "Not yet," she said. Rebecca studied her. "You're choosing restraint." "Yes." Why? Claire closed the notebook gently. "Because the record already stands." Across town, Jordan sat in his empty dining room. The house felt different now. Less like possession, more like liability. He poured himself water instead of whiskey. He replayed the judge's words in his mind. Intent is inferred from language. He had built his professional life on language. Negotiation, presentation, framing. Now language had framed him. He called Carl again. "What happens if I settle?" Jordan asked. Carl's response was direct. "You comply fully, you negotiate equitable division, you agree to non-disparagement terms." Jordan hesitated. "And the brokerage likely subject to partial division." Jordan felt irritation flare. "That's not fair." Carl paused. "Fairness is relative to transparency," the phrase echoed. "Fairness." Meanwhile, Claire joined a secure call with Daniel Reeves. "Any complications in divorce proceedings?" Daniel asked. "Disclosure disputes," Claire replied. "Nothing affecting the trust." "Good," Daniel said. "We'll maintain separation." Claire looked out her apartment window. The sun was lowering behind distant buildings. "I don't intend to use the inheritance in negotiations," she said. Daniel's tone was thoughtful. That is often the strongest position. She understood that. Power unused is different from power displayed. That evening, Jordan sent a final text directly to Claire. "We need to talk without lawyers." Claire read it. She did not respond. Instead, she forwarded it to Rebecca. Minutes later, her phone buzzed again. A voicemail this time. Claire Jordan's voice sounded strained. "This is spiraling. I didn't think it would go this far." Claire listened to the recording twice. Then she wrote, "Voicemail admission of miscalculation." The next mediation session was scheduled for the following week. Jordan entered it differently, less certain, more cautious. The mediator reviewed the updated disclosure. "This matter can resolve," she said evenly. "But continued resistance will increase cost." Wait, Jordan looked at Claire across the table. "You really want to take this all the way?" he asked. Claire met his eyes. "I want it concluded properly." The mediator nodded. "That is reasonable." Revised terms were drafted. Equitable division of marital assets, shared proceeds from brokerage account. Attorney's fees partially assigned to Jordan due to non-disclosure delay. Non-disparagement clause added. Jordan's pen hovered above the page. He hesitated. He thought of the funeral, the public reading of the text, the email referencing pressure, the judge's warning. He signed. Claire signed. No dramatic gestures, no visible triumph, just ink. As they stood to leave, Jordan spoke quietly. "You didn't have to do this." Claire paused. "You did." She walked out of the room without looking back. Jordan remained seated for a moment longer. He had initiated the divorce, believing control belonged to the first mover. He now understood something different. Control belongs to the prepared. And Claire had been preparing long before he realized he was being observed. He still did not know about the inheritance. He still believed the case had resolved through persistence. He did not yet see the full shift. That would come later. For now, the legal tide had turned, not loudly, not violently, but definitively, and Claire remained exactly as she had begun, quiet. Documented, steady, discovery did not end when Jordan signed the revised mediation draft. It expanded, because signatures in divorce proceedings do not erase what has already surfaced. They merely mark transition points. Rebecca Sloan moved forward with precision. "Settlement discussions do not preclude formal discovery review," she told Claire during their next meeting. "We need final confirmation before submission." Claire nodded. She had learned that completion required verification. Jordan believed the worst had passed. He had signed revised terms. He had agreed to partial division of the brokerage account. He had accepted the non-disparagement clause with visible reluctance. But he underestimated the gravity of formal review. Rebecca had subpoenaed complete transaction histories tied to the brokerage withdrawals labeled consulting expenses. What came back was not catastrophic. It was consistent. 3 hotel stays, 2 airline tickets, a restaurant charge in Scottsdale, a recurring transfer to an individual account ending in 9,083. Claire studied the statement carefully. She did not ask who owned account 9,083. She did not need to. The pattern told its own story. Rebecca folded her hands. "Were you aware of this?" she asked gently. Claire's expression did not change. "No." Rebecca nodded. "Do you wish to pursue infidelity claims?" Claire considered the question carefully. "No," she said after a moment. "The financial misrepresentation is sufficient." Rebecca studied her. "You're certain?" "Yes." There was no tremor in her voice, no wounded pride, only alignment with objective. Across town, Jordan received notice of the subpoena compliance review. He stared at the pages Carl sent him. "You didn't tell me they'd dig this deep," Jordan said. Carl's tone was clipped. "I told you full disclosure was required. It's personal. It became legal when marital funds were involved." Jordan felt a pulse of frustration. It wasn't serious. Carl did not respond, because seriousness was not the issue. Transparency was. Meanwhile, Rebecca prepared a supplemental filing citing undisclosed financial transfers inconsistent with prior statements. The language remained measured. The respondent failed to accurately characterize expenditures tied to marital funds, necessitating judicial clarification. Claire read the draft before it was filed. "Will this extend proceedings?" she asked. Briefly, Rebecca replied, "But it strengthens final enforcement." Claire nodded. "Proceed." The next hearing was scheduled 2 weeks later. The courtroom atmosphere shifted subtly. The judge had reviewed the supplemental documentation in advance. "Mr. Whitmore," the judge said, voice level, "you characterize these withdrawals as consulting expenses. Can you provide invoices?" Jordan swallowed. "No." "Contracts, no." The judge looked at him steadily. "Then what were they?" Jordan hesitated. "Personal." The word echoed faintly. The judge glanced at the record. "Personal expenditures funded partially through marital accounts and misrepresented during disclosure." Jordan felt heat rising behind his collar. It wasn't intentional concealment. The judge's expression remained neutral. "Intent is assessed through pattern." There was that word again, pattern. Claire remained seated beside Rebecca, hands folded, eyes steady. She did not look at Jordan. She did not need to see his discomfort to understand it. The judge issued a formal finding failure to accurately disclose expenditures, partial reassignment of additional attorney's fees to Jordan, mandatory financial affidavit update. Jordan's signature for mediation still stood. But the record now carried judicial language, findings, not allegations. After the hearing, Jordan stepped into the hallway, face pale with controlled frustration. Claire emerged moments later. He approached her. "You could have just let it go," he said quietly. Claire turned to him. "You could have disclosed it." He exhaled sharply. It wasn't relevant. It became relevant when it was misrepresented. Her tone remained even. Not accusing, not bitter, precise. Jordan searched her face again. He still did not understand how she remained so composed. "You're not even angry," he said. Claire considered that. Anger isn't required. He had no answer. That evening, Claire returned to her apartment and opened her notebook. Judicial finding misrepresentation. Attorney fees reassigned. Pattern legally acknowledged. She closed it gently. The inheritance remained separate, untouched. Daniel Reeves had informed her that asset transition paperwork was nearly complete. Final trustee confirmation would occur within the month. Once finalized, Daniel had said earlier that week, "You'll have full discretionary control within trust guidelines." Claire had thanked him. She had not mentioned the judicial findings. They existed in separate worlds. One tightening under scrutiny, one reinforcing protection. Jordan, however, felt both worlds closing in. His social circle had grown quieter. 2 colleagues had subtly distanced themselves after rumors circulated about the brokerage withdrawals. Linda Whitmore had stopped defending him in family conversations. "You handled it poorly," she told him bluntly one evening, publicly and privately. Jordan bristled. "She's making me look dishonest." Linda's response was steady. "Were you?" He had no immediate reply. Later that night, Jordan stood alone in the kitchen of the house he had once declared solely his. The silence felt different now, less triumphant, more reflective. He replayed the funeral again. The way Claire had stood without reacting. The way witnesses had looked at him afterward. He had believed humiliation would establish control. Instead, it had invited scrutiny. Meanwhile, Claire received final confirmation from Daniel Reeves. The trust transfer was complete. A digital portal provided secure access to asset oversight dashboards. Margaret Ellis scheduled an introductory call with the independent management firm. Claire logged into the portal once. She viewed the summary page. $203, $487, $112. She closed the browser. Power did not need to be displayed to exist. The divorce proceedings moved toward final decree. Revised financial division reflected judicial findings. Attorney's fees reallocated. Non-disparagement clause finalized. As the final court date approached, Jordan began to sense something larger than legal consequence. He sensed permanence. The record would remain. Court filings do not fade. They archive. Claire, sitting at her small dining table, opened her notebook once more. Final decree pending. Trust secured. Separation clean. She paused. Then she added, objective intact. No celebration, no relief expressed in ink. Just completion. Jordan still did not know about the inheritance. He believed he had lost leverage through miscalculation. He did not yet realize how profoundly misaligned his assumptions had been from the beginning. He had believed unemployment equaled dependency. He had believed public shaming equaled dominance. He had believed speed equaled advantage. Each belief had been tested. Each had failed. Claire closed the notebook and turned off the light. In the quiet, two truths coexisted. One man had spoken first. One woman had documented. And documentation, once acknowledged by law, becomes memory that cannot be revised. The balance had shifted long ago. Jordan was only beginning to feel it. The shift in Jordan's tone began subtly. Less sharp, less declarative, more searching. It started with a message sent late on a Thursday evening. We should talk, not about court, about us. Claire read it while seated at her dining table, a single lamp casting soft light across the room. She did not respond immediately. She closed her laptop and opened her notebook instead. Shift in tone conciliatory. Timing after judicial findings. There was a pause between writing and thought. Then she set the notebook aside. Jordan called 2 minutes later. She let it ring once more before answering. Yes, his voice was quieter than usual. I don't want this to end like this. Claire leaned back in her chair. It's ending legally, she said. That was your decision. I know, he replied quickly, but it's gotten out of control. Control was always part of it. There was no accusation in her voice, only observation. Jordan exhaled. I was embarrassed, he admitted. By what? The job loss. The way it looked. Claire did not respond. Silence stretched. I shouldn't have said what I said at the funeral, he added almost reluctantly. It was the first direct acknowledgement. Claire considered the weight of that sentence. You chose that moment, she said calmly. I didn't think it would matter that much. It mattered. He swallowed. I didn't mean to humiliate you. You did. The correction was quiet. Jordan closed his eyes briefly on the other end of the line. I misjudged it, he said. Claire heard the subtle shift. Not remorse for harm, regret for consequence. We're past intent, she replied. There was another pause. I didn't expect you to fight, he said finally. Claire allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible breath. I didn't, she said. You hired lawyers. I documented. The word unsettled him again. Jordan leaned back against his kitchen counter. Why didn't you just tell me what you wanted, he asked. Claire's gaze moved toward the window. I did. When? When I didn't argue. He had no framework for that. Across town, Rebecca Sloan reviewed final decree drafts. Claire had opted not to pursue additional claims beyond equitable distribution and documented fees. Many clients would press further, Rebecca said during their meeting that afternoon. Claire nodded. I'm not many clients. Rebecca looked at her thoughtfully. You could request expanded relief. I don't need it. Rebecca did not ask about the inheritance. She did not need to. Clarity had replaced urgency. Meanwhile, Jordan faced something unfamiliar, diminishing support. 2 real estate clients had postponed meetings after gossip circulated about court issues. Linda Whitmore had stopped attending social gatherings with him. Let things settle, she advised. He had wanted admiration for decisiveness. He received distance instead. The following week, mediation reconvened briefly to finalize minor asset valuations. Jordan arrived subdued. Claire arrived unchanged. The mediator reviewed the adjusted financial split. All terms appear equitable, she said. Are both parties prepared to proceed toward final decree? Jordan hesitated. Yes, he said finally. Claire nodded once. Yes. When the session concluded, Jordan lingered. As Rebecca gathered documents, Jordan spoke quietly. Can we walk outside? Rebecca looked at Claire. Claire considered for a moment. 5 minutes, she said. Outside, the afternoon air was warm. Jordan stood a few feet away from her in the parking lot. I never thought you'd leave like this, he said. You asked me to. I didn't think you'd actually go. Claire looked at him steadily. You texted me divorce papers. He flinched slightly. I was reacting. You were deciding. He ran a hand through his hair. I thought you needed me. Claire did not smile. I thought so too. The admission was simple, unadorned. H. Jordan looked startled. What changed, Claire, held his gaze. You showed me. The words were not cruel, they were factual. Silence settled between them. I didn't know how else to handle it, he said quietly. There were other ways. I panicked. Claire nodded once. That part, I believe. It was the closest she came to softness. Jordan searched her face. Is there anything I can fix? Claire considered the question. No, she said gently. There's only what you can accept. He looked down at the pavement. And you, I'm accepting. He swallowed. I didn't want to lose you. Claire's voice remained even. You wanted to lose the version of me that didn't reflect well on you. He had no defense for that. The final decree hearing was scheduled for the following month. In the interim, Daniel Reeves confirmed full transfer authority over the trust. Margaret Ellis arranged quarterly portfolio review calls. Claire listened carefully, but remained restrained. She did not move money. She did not alter investments. She maintained insulation. Jordan, meanwhile, attempted one final pivot. He invited Claire to dinner via text. Closure, no lawyers. Claire read the message. She did not reply. Instead, she forwarded it to Rebecca, who responded simply, maintain boundaries. Claire placed her phone face down. Boundaries no longer felt defensive. They felt natural. On the morning of the final decree hearing, Claire dressed simply. Black slacks, pale blouse, no jewelry beyond a watch. Jordan wore another navy suit. The courtroom was quieter than before. Less tension, more finality. The judge reviewed the settlement briefly. All matters appear resolved, she said. Divorce is hereby granted. The gavel struck softly. Just like that, 8 years became record. Outside the courthouse, Jordan hesitated. Claire, he called gently. She turned. He looked as though he wanted to say more. He did not. Instead, he nodded once. She nodded back. Then she walked toward her car. There was no triumph, no visible relief, only forward motion. That evening, Claire returned to her apartment and opened her notebook. Divorce finalized. No escalation required. Separation complete. She closed it carefully. In the days that followed, Jordan began to hear fragments of another narrative. A rumor that Claire had relocated legal counsel to California. A mention that she had been seen consulting financial advisors in San Diego. He dismissed it at first. Then curiosity replaced dismissal. One evening, a mutual acquaintance said casually over drinks, heard Claire's aunt left her something substantial. Jordan froze, like what he asked lightly. Not sure the acquaintance shrugged. But enough. Jordan's mind raced. He replayed every assumption he had made, every statement at the funeral, every reference to her unemployment. He felt a cold realization creeping in. He had never asked what resources she had. He had assumed, and assumption, when exposed, becomes liability. Claire, across state lines, stood on a balcony overlooking the Pacific Ocean during her first visit to review trust properties. The wind moved softly through her hair. She did not think of revenge. She thought of structure, of insulation, of quiet strength. Jordan was only beginning to understand that the balance had shifted long before he signed the decree, and he still did not know the full extent of it. That revelation was approaching. Not with spectacle, with documentation. Jordan learned the number by accident. Not from Claire, not from court, from a real estate database. He had been reviewing commercial property transactions in San Diego late one evening, distracted, restless. His license granted him access to industry platforms that tracked ownership transfers tied to major investment portfolios. One listing caught his attention. A waterfront mixed-use development in La Jolla had changed trustee designation. The name attached to the filing was unfamiliar at first. E. Gonzales Revocable Trust. Successor trustee Claire M. Gonzales. Jordan stared at the screen. The valuation column listed an estimated asset range. He refreshed the page once, then again. The portfolio under the trust name extended far beyond the single property. He cross-referenced quickly: commercial holdings, equity stakes, municipal bonds. An aggregated estimate appeared on a financial summary site. $200, 00000 plus. Jordan's hand tightened around the mouse. He leaned back slowly in his chair. For several seconds, he did not move. The pieces aligned with unsettling clarity. Her composure, her refusal to negotiate under pressure, her lack of urgency, the insulation he had mistaken for indifference. She had never been financially cornered. He had been negotiating from a position he did not understand. He sat there for a long time. The memory of the funeral surfaced uninvited. I can't stay married to someone who can't even keep a job. The sentence felt smaller now, small and loud. Across state lines, Claire was reviewing quarterly projections with Margaret Ellis in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the Pacific. Charts filled the screen. Asset performance, diversification metrics, risk exposure. You've chosen not to increase personal distributions, Margaret observed. Yes, Claire replied. Keep reinvestment steady. Margaret studied her. Most beneficiaries restructure lifestyle quickly. I prefer continuity. Margaret nodded. Your aunt would have approved. Claire did not smile. She thought briefly of Eleanor Gonzales, reserved, strategic, allergic to spectacle. Jordan drove to Linda Whitmore's house that evening without calling first. She opened the door with a visible surprise. Jordan, did you know? He asked immediately. Know what about Claire's aunt? Linda frowned. She passed away recently, didn't she? She left Claire over $200 million. Linda blinked. That can't be right. It is. Jordan stepped inside without invitation. She never told me. Linda's voice was careful. Why would she? He stared at her. We were married. Linda folded her arms. You divorced her. The words landed plainly. Jordan felt heat rise in his chest. She let me think she was financially dependent. Linda's gaze sharpened. You assumed. He exhaled sharply. She should have said something. About an inheritance. Linda replied calmly. When before I filed. Linda's expression hardened slightly. Would that have changed what you said at the church? Jordan had no immediate answer. Silence filled the room. He left without saying goodbye. That night, he called Claire. She answered after the second ring. You knew, he said without greeting. Knew what? About the trust. Yes. For how long before the divorce was filed? Let's say no. Jordan closed his eyes. You let me believe you had nothing. I never said I had nothing. You didn't correct me. You didn't ask. Simplicity of the exchange unsettled him more than accusation would have. That's manipulation, he said. Claire's tone remained steady. No, it's separation. You watched me. He stopped himself. Yes, she said quietly. I would have handled things differently. Would you? The question was soft, not sarcastic. Jordan hesitated. I wouldn't have embarrassed you. Claire did not respond immediately. The wind moved softly against her balcony door in California. You didn't embarrass me because I lacked money, she said finally. You embarrassed me because you believed money defined worth. Jordan felt the words settle slowly. That's not fair. It's accurate. He exhaled. You could have told me. You could have waited. Silence stretched between them. You made me look like a fool, he said. Claire's voice did not shift. You did that publicly. The memory of the funeral returned again, clearer, now heavier. Jordan sat down at his kitchen table, the same table where he had once assumed sole ownership. I thought you needed me, he said quietly. I thought you believed that Claire replied. And you didn't correct it. I was observing. The word again, observing. Jordan felt the shift fully now. She had not fought. She had not retaliated. She had not used the inheritance in court. She had simply documented. You could have destroyed me in court, he said. I didn't need to. Why not? Claire looked out toward the ocean. Because leaving was enough. The answer disarmed him. No revenge, no spectacle, just departure. Jordan ran a hand over his face. I misjudged you. Yes, and I misjudged myself. Claire did not respond to that. After a moment, he asked quietly, Are you happy? Claire considered the question carefully. I'm steady, she said. It was not the answer he expected. He let out a breath that felt almost like surrender. I never saw you as powerful, he admitted. Claire's reply was gentle. That was the problem. The call ended without further argument. Jordan remained seated long after the screen went dark. He thought about leverage, about assumption, about how quickly he had equated employment with value. He remembered saying image is equity. Now the phrase felt hollow. Across the country, Claire closed her laptop and stepped onto the balcony again. The ocean stretched wide and indifferent. Power unused is quieter than power displayed. She had never intended to weaponize the inheritance. She had only intended to protect it, and herself. Jordan's discovery did not alter the decree. It did not reopen proceedings. It altered perspective. For him, not for her. Claire returned inside and opened her notebook. Jordan, aware of trust, reaction regret framed as miscalculation. She paused, then added, no escalation. She closed the notebook. The final shift had occurred. Not in court, not in a public confrontation, but in understanding. Jordan now knew that the woman he had dismissed as financially unstable had possessed resources beyond his comprehension. He understood that his urgency had been rooted in fear of optics. He understood that humiliation had been projection. He understood that silence had not been weakness. It had been strength withheld. Claire turned off the light. The balance had shifted completely now, not because she displayed power, but because she never needed to. Jordan requested one final meeting, not by text, not through accusation, through email. Claire, I'd like to meet in person. No lawyers, no negotiations, just clarity, if you're willing. Claire read the message twice. She did not feel urgency. She felt completion. After a pause, she replied with a single sentence. 30 minutes, public place. They met at a quiet cafe overlooking the marina in San Diego. Jordan arrived early. He looked smaller somehow, not physically diminished, but less certain of his posture. The confidence that had once shaped his shoulders had softened into something closer to caution. Claire entered 5 minutes later. Neutral blouse, dark slacks, hair tied back neatly. She sat across from him without ceremony. For a moment, neither spoke. The ocean moved quietly behind them. I didn't know how to begin, Jordan said finally. Claire waited. He inhaled slowly. I've replayed the funeral in my head more times than I can count. She did not react. I thought I was being decisive, he continued. I thought ending it quickly would prevent embarrassment. It created it, Claire said calmly. He nodded, yes. Silence stretched, but it was not hostile. It was reflective. I found out about the trust through a property filing, he said. Not from you. That's correct. You could have told me. I didn't owe you disclosure before you chose to leave. The statement is factual, not sharp. Jordan accepted that. I realize now, he said slowly, that I treated your job loss as proof of decline. Claire looked at him steadily. You treated it as proof of worth. He swallowed. Yes, and when I lost that job, you believed you lost something in me. Jordan lowered his eyes. I thought we were moving in different directions. We were, she said softly. The simplicity of her agreement startled him. He looked up. You're not angry, he observed again. No. Why? Claire folded her hands on the table. Because anger would tie me to you. The answer silenced him. I don't want to be your enemy, he said quietly. You're not, she replied. Then what am I? Claire considered the question carefully. A lesson. Jordan absorbed that. It was not cruel. It was accurate. He exhaled slowly. I underestimated you. Yes, and I underestimated what silence meant. Claire nodded once. You thought it meant compliance. Yes, it meant observation. He looked toward the water. Did you ever plan to tell me about the inheritance? Claire took a moment before answering. If we had stayed married, yes, transparently, with structure, but not after I filed. No. He nodded slowly. I thought you needed me. I once believed that too. Repetition carried weight. Jordan leaned back in his chair. I don't know how I became someone who measured worth like that. Claire's gaze softened slightly. You valued image. He let out a short breath. I still do. Yes. The honesty lingered between them. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. There's nothing to forgive, she replied. He looked confused. I made mistakes. Yes. And you'll live with them. The absence of dramatics unsettled him more than confrontation would have. I embarrassed you publicly, he said quietly. Yes. And you didn't retaliate. I didn't need to. He nodded. I understand that now. Another pause settled. The cafe hummed softly around them. Jordan looked at her carefully. You've changed. Claire shook her head slightly. No. Then what is this clarity? The same word she'd used months earlier. He recognized it now. It was not aggression. It was alignment. I thought divorce would simplify things, he said. It clarified them, she replied. He studied her face. You're going to stay in California? Yes. With the trust? Yes. And you're not going to tell people how much? No. A faint, almost involuntary smile touched his face. That's very you. She did not smile back. Silence is efficient. He nodded. I don't deserve another chance. Claire did not answer immediately. Then she said quietly, You're right. The finality of it was not harsh. It was settled. Jordan looked at the ocean again. I didn't lose you because you lost your job, he said after a moment. No, I lost you because I showed you who I was. Yes. The acknowledgement hung cleanly between them. They finished their coffee without further confrontation. When they stood, Jordan hesitated. Thank you for meeting, he said. Claire inclined her head slightly. Take care, Jordan. He watched her walk away toward the parking lot. There was no dramatic exit, no triumphant glance, just movement forward. Jordan remained standing a moment longer. The marina stretched wide and indifferent. He had once believed power came from speaking first. Now he understood that power also comes from restraint, from not reacting, from not retaliating, from simply stepping away. That evening, Claire returned to her condominium overlooking the Pacific. The trust management team had finalized the creation of a new philanthropic branch under the Gonzales name. Claire had authorized it quietly, a legal aid fund for women facing financial coercion during divorce proceedings, seated anonymously, structured through separate trustees, no press releases, no announcements, just structure. She reviewed the documents carefully before signing. Margaret Ellis asked during their call, Would you like your name publicly associated? No, Claire replied. Margaret nodded. Understood. Claire closed the folder and stepped onto her balcony once more. The ocean carried a steady rhythm. In Texas, Jordan sat alone at his kitchen table. The house felt too large now. He replayed their conversation. He understood something fully for the first time. Claire had not won. She had not retaliated. She had not exposed the trust in court. She had simply left with dignity intact. And that was the part he could not undo. He had divorced her by text. He had read it aloud in a church. He had believed financial vulnerability equaled weakness. He had been wrong. Not because she possessed $200 million, but because she possessed restraint. Claire opened her notebook one final time that evening. Meeting concluded. No hostility, no reversal. Departure affirmed. She paused. Then she wrote, dignity maintained. She closed the notebook gently. The story had reached its natural end. Not with spectacle, not with revenge, but with clarity. Jordan would carry the lesson. Claire would carry forward. And neither would need to speak of it again. The legal documents arrived on a quiet Monday morning. Final decree. Property division confirmed. Non-disparagement clause executed. Attorney's fees transferred. Claire signed the final acknowledgement electronically from her office overlooking the Pacific. There was no ceremony, no exhale of triumph, just completion. 8 years had been reduced to archived pages in a county database. She closed the document and shut her laptop. Outside, the ocean moved steadily, indifferent to personal endings. In Houston, Jordan received the same confirmation. He stared at the email longer than necessary. He had thought finality would feel like relief. Instead, it felt like exposure without audience. There would be no further hearings, no more negotiation, no more chances to reframe. The record stood. He walked through the house slowly that afternoon. The living room still held the framed wedding photo he had not removed. He studied it. They looked aligned in that image, balanced. He remembered how easily he had said, "We can't afford for this to drag." He had mistaken momentum for strength. Now the house echoed differently. Not empty, just quieter. Claire's life, meanwhile, did not accelerate. It settled. The condominium in California was modest compared to the trust's holdings. 2 bedrooms, glass balcony, minimal decor. She kept it intentionally simple. Margaret Ellis finalized quarterly reviews. Daniel Reeves confirmed that all trust assets had been fully transitioned under Claire's trusteeship. "Everything is secure," Daniel said during their last scheduled call. "Thank you," Claire replied. "Your aunt would be proud of the restraint you've shown." Claire paused. Restraint was her language, she said, and now it was hers. The legal aid fund launched quietly under the Gonzales family initiative. Grants were distributed discreetly to nonprofit organizations, assisting women facing financial manipulation in divorce. Claire did not attend ceremonies. She did not sit on boards publicly. She structured it, funded it, and stepped back. The work would speak without her. One evening, several months after the final decree, Claire returned to Texas briefly to settle remaining personal matters. The visit was uneventful. No confrontation, no accidental meetings. Jordan heard she was in town. He did not reach out. Nay, he had learned that silence can also be respect. At St. Mark's Community Church, Sunday service proceeded as usual. No one mentioned the funeral months earlier, but the memory remained in the community's quiet awareness. Words spoken publicly do not disappear. They settle into collective memory. Jordan attended once. He did not stand near the front. He did not speak loudly. He listened. After service, Mrs. Whitaker approached him gently. "I hope you're well," she said. "I'm learning," he replied. It was the most honest sentence he had spoken in months. Claire left Texas the next morning. On the flight back to California, she opened her notebook one final time. The pages held months of dates, phrases, findings, judicial language. She turned to the last blank page. She did not write immediately. Then she added a single sentence. "I didn't win. I left." She closed the notebook and slid it into her bag. The power shift had never been about money. The inheritance had insulated her. But it hadn't defined her. What defined her was the choice not to retaliate, not to humiliate in return, not to weaponize advantage. She had documented. She had allowed the legal system to operate. She had walked away with dignity intact. Jordan, back in Houston, began rebuilding his professional reputation slowly. He avoided public commentary about the divorce. He complied with every financial obligation precisely. He stopped speaking first. When colleagues asked about his ex-wife, he answered simply, "We handled it legally." He did not mention the trust. He did not mention the funeral. He did not need to. He understood now that some lessons are not meant for public redemption. They are meant for private correction. Months later, Claire stood once more on her balcony overlooking the Pacific. The philanthropic fund had expanded quietly. 2 legal clinics had opened additional consultation hours because of it. No press releases, no plaques, just function. Her phone buzzed. A short message from an unfamiliar number. "Thank you. Your support helped me leave safely." No signature, no details. Claire read it twice. Then she deleted it. Not because it did not matter, but because it did not require response. The ocean moved steadily below. Jordan, hundreds of miles away, stood in his kitchen and poured coffee in silence. He no longer rehearsed speeches in his head. He no longer imagined announcements. He had learned that power spoken carelessly becomes liability, and silence spoken intentionally becomes strength. Claire did not look back. She did not check his social media. She did not revisit the court filings. She did not replay the funeral. She did not need closure from him. She had found it in structure, in documentation, in departure. The story had begun with humiliation in a sacred space. It ended with quiet dignity on open water. There was no public reckoning, no dramatic exposure of the $200 million in court. Only awareness. Jordan understood what he had misjudged. Claire understood what she would never tolerate again. And the difference between them was not wealth. It was restraint. She stepped back inside as the sun lowered over the Pacific. The notebook remained closed. The legal record remained archived. The trust remained separate. And Claire Gonzales moved forward without noise. Not victorious, not vengeful, just free. If this story stayed with you, take a quiet moment to reflect on what dignity looks like in your own life. If you'd like to share where you're watching from and what time it is there, I read every comment. It's a reminder that strength isn't loud, and it isn't rare. And if you value stories where justice unfolds without spectacle, you're welcome to subscribe and stay for the next one. Some lessons don't need shouting, they only need remembering.